Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name's Tom Phillis. I'm from the organising team in the European Commission, and I will start by sharing my screen. Voila. Okie dokie. So I understand that some people will still be logging in and joining us and getting their audio sorted. So I'm just going to run through the house rules of today's session and the agenda, and then we can move on to the more substantive presentations that we have today. So I'd like to welcome you to this live webinar on preserving digital geospatial records. The ground rules for the webinar today are please click on Connect Audio to hear the presenters, but make sure your microphone is muted. I set it so that all new joiners should be muted, but please make sure that the button with the phone handle on it is red, which is the sign that you are muted, and that's obviously to make sure that we don't disturb today's presenters. There is a chat function to the right of the screen.
Tom, I think you've got the title wrong, Tom. The title of today's webinar, just in case folk are worried. It's not.
Okay, sorry.
It's not geospatial records, it's preserving processes.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you very much, Janet, for the clarification.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you very much there, Janet. Let me just check indeed that we have the right slide deck for today's session. Yes, okay, we do. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, and then the other key thing to keep in mind is that we have a chat function in which you can submit your questions. So these might be technical questions if you're experiencing some problems, and also questions that you might have for the speakers today. And we will provide written answers to these questions. And please note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will publish the recording of this webinar on the event page, and a link will be circulated to you in due course. So today's agenda, so I'm going to give a very short overview on the Sef program. We then have Dr. Jamie Kaminski, who's going to introduce the Sef eArchiving building block. And then we have our speaker Katya today, who will be presenting the digital preservation service process from the National Archives of Finland. And then we will have a Q&A for all of the three presentations that we have at the end. Although obviously you can submit questions in the chat function as we go on. So very briefly, we can, oops. So just to give you a sort of brief overview of the CEF program. So the CEF stands for the Connecting Europe Facility, which is the EU's largest financing instrument for trans-European infrastructure. So it's active in the areas of transport and energy and telecom. And within telecom, we have the CEF digital program, which funds critical cross-border digital infrastructure, of which electronic archiving is part. The CEF is established as a regulation with guidelines defining how the program should be implemented, and then yearly work programs which go into some more granular detail on what the objectives of this critical infrastructure is. Within Sef Digital, the European Commission funds a number of reusable critical cross-border digital infrastructures, which we call building blocks, therefore the Sef Building Blocks. So to quickly run through the whole catalog of building blocks, we have big data test infrastructure, which is basically a sandbox for experimenting with big data sets, especially big data sets procured through the European Data Portal. Although any public data is admissible. The context broker, which is an API, basically allowing for different data sets to be combined and understood simultaneously to achieve a holistic view of what different data sets are saying, and can be built into IoT and smart solutions. We have the eArchiving building block, which we're going to discuss in some detail today. We have the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, which is basically setting up in an EU-level blockchain node network technology form. We have the e-invoicing building block, which promotes the reuse of the European standard on e-invoicing. This is to boost cross-border public procurement and more innovative digital public procurement solutions. Sef EID supports the verification and authentication of EU citizens in different member states via the provisions of the eIDAS regulation on authentication and trust services in the single market. E-delivery is a scalable cross-border message exchange infrastructure for structured data transmission based on the AS4 message exchange protocol. E-signature, like EID, supports the implementation of the provisions of the eIDAS regulation, which means electronic signatures and seals which are conformant to the level legal framework. And finally, e-translation is a solution that can be integrated into online public services and also reused by SMEs to make services multilingual in the 24 EU official languages, plus Icelandic and Norwegian. The CEF program supports you using the building block through several measures. We organize training sessions. These can be online or on site, though obviously in the current context, everything is taking place online. This can be sample software, which you can download directly, and testing service, so validation and conformance testing services. The services available for each building block are unique to each building block and therefore do change based on the specific needs of stakeholders in that area. Oops. How do you use a building block? You can, depending on each individual building block's construction, you can build a solution on scratch based on the standards that underpin all of the Sef building blocks. You can buy compliance solutions on the market, which are built based on these same standards, which are defined often in EU legislation or via large-scale pilot projects. Or you can reuse the sample software that we provide on the Sef digital site. The key thing to keep in mind is that all of the building blocks are based on interoperable standards, and these standards form the core of the digital infrastructure that the building blocks help establish. That's a very brief introduction to the other Sef building blocks and the Sef program as a whole. I'm now going to hand the floor over to Jamie. Just change presenting role. And Jamie is going to take us through the next part of the presentation.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tom, for that, as always, really useful introduction to the Sef building blocks. As Tom mentioned, I'm head of training for the eArchiving building block. And today I'd like to extend my welcome to what is the fourth of our training webinars. But before we start today, I thought I'd say a few words about the eArchiving building block. So we started back in late 2018, and the building block, it provides a set of specifications and tools for transmitting, describing and preserving digital data, all of which can be found on the building block website, the URL of which can be seen on the screen in front of you. And don't worry if you miss it, the slides we put up online later, so you can grab this URL if you wish. So what do we do? Well, we provide a variety of e-archiving services. We maintain technical specifications. Tom talked about specifications earlier. In our particular case, the core specification is the common specification for information packages. And our very first webinar was an introduction to that specific specification. We also provide open source tools that you can download and use right away. We have compliance and validation services that ensure that specifications are followed. We have a service desk. We're developing a training offering of which this is part. We have outreach and community engagement activities of which this is also a part. And all of this revolves around data preservation, reuse, migration, and trust. So, as I said, today's webinar is part of the eArchiving Building Blocks training offer. And our training is based on actual user requirements. We pride ourselves on listening to the community, and one of the most important tools that we use to try and understand the community's needs is our user needs survey. So, if you happen to be listening today and you've not completed the survey, then please have a look at it, and if you can, fill it in. It is a critical tool for us for understanding what training the community actually needs and what we need to do to accommodate it. From your perspective, it gives you an opportunity to influence the kind of training that's provided. And in fact, this very webinar is in part a response to the requests that came in through the questionnaire that asked for higher level training that focused on, amongst other things, process. So our training is not all about drilling down into menus. It's much broader than that. So this questionnaire is really important. Is the content still on screen? Can you see anything? I seem to have lost it.
No.
No. Okay.
No, sorry, Jamie.
Oh, it's gone. Okay, well, don't worry. I can just talk through this. We don't need slides. So in terms of our core training, it's going to be delivered in the form of webinars like this one, video-based training, training modules in the form of Moodle modules. And the content will include things like the core specification, which, as I said, is the common specification for information packages. We'll also look at some of our key content information type specifications, so things like database and geospatial data. We'll look at validation and compliance. We'll look at end-to-end e-archiving systems such as Rhoda and ESSArch. So we've already done a 3-hour session on ESSArch, and next month we'll be doing a session on Rhoda. We'll also be looking at database preservation tools. So our next webinar will be on Thursday the 30th of June, and there we will look at Rhoda, which is an end-to-end solution for digital preservation. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. The webinars are part of a broader range of outreach activities that include things like workshops, presentations at conferences, though obviously at the moment there's not a lot going on in terms of conferences and workshops, but as soon as they resume, so will we. We've got a LinkedIn group, we've got a Twitter handle, and those will all be on the slides. And, you know, if you wish, please feel free to sign up to those. So that leaves me with the final task for me today, which is to introduce our speaker, Katya Suomilami. Katya is the Senior Planning Officer at the National Archives of Finland, where she specialises in digital archiving and service process development. She's got more than 10 years of experience of records and information lifecycle management in both governments and municipalities. And today she is going to introduce us to the digital preservation service process. So, Katya, let me give you the.
Yes, thank you. I'm waiting to get the host role, so
Just bear with me.
I can share.
Unfortunately, you're right off the bottom of the screen. So, right. Take that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Oh, it came back to the building block.
Sorry.
The host role. Yeah.
I'll bring it back down to you. You're indeed right at the bottom. Voila, there we go. Okay, Katya, you should have it now.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, here we go. So thank you, Thomas and Jamie, for the introduction. So my name is Katya Suomilammi, and I work in National Archives of Finland. And I want to thank all of you for joining with me today. I'm very excited and a bit nervous to host this webinar today because I haven't seen or participated events that cover exact today's topic. But maybe that's why Janet and Jamie kindly encouraged me to host this session, so you can thank them or blame them, whatever you choose. So let's start. Here you can see the context and discussion topics of this webinar. So you have been warned. Because I'm hosting this webinar by myself, I will concentrate going through the presentation, and after that I will make sure that I have answered every question in the chat. So if I don't answer you right away, don't be alarmed. I will come back to that after the presentation. Okay, so let's do the topic rundown. Preservation and Digital Archive Service Process, case National Archives of Finland. Applicable also in another organization types. My interest of this topic comes from working about 10 years in records and information lifecycle management in both government and municipalities. So this is more of experience-based model and process than evidence-based model and process. So these are based on my experiences in the field and with cooperation with different kind of organizations. I hope that these processes and topics are applicable to different kind of organizations, not only national archives. So keep an open mind with this presentation because I think that we have a lot of common factors. So all presented ideas and processes are experience based. So there's all the disclaimers I can give you now. And next point is what is the needed service in preservation service process. So in my point of view, service is the key. So we need to identify what is the actual service in needed, that why that process is for, what is the service we wanna provide. That comes down to understanding who needs what and how could they be supported and met. Dynamics and communication between repository owners and operation managers. Here is a bit difference in terminology. So I use different kind of terminology describing roles. I try to be more role-based than using um, uh, um, actual terminology, because those are not standardized. But in eArchiving, we are using repository owners like National Archives and operation managers, who are the transferring organization or clients and so on. So please don't be confused. I try to describe these participants based on roles, so you can imagine how that matches in your case and organization. How preservation and digital archive service process affects the development of digital archiving. So at the end of this presentation, I want to discuss with you about the importance of the service process, because I see and from my experience, that is a big part of getting digital archiving a more wider use, and also developing that area. So I think that service has a bigger effect than we might recognize. And lastly, this is kind of a call for colleagues. Like I said in the beginning, I haven't seen events that cover exact today's topic. So if this sounds familiar to you, if you're in a similar role that I am, I'm very keen to connect and change experiences, find best practices, and so on. Because like I said in the beginning, I think that many of these um, um, topics are applicable also in other organizations than National Archives. And like Jamie said, today's topic is the focus is more on process and approach, not technical specification. Of course, those are key elements also. So, but there's webinars on that too. So this is a bit more process related webinar. Then a bit of information about current situation in my organization. I keep this short because I want to focus on the service process and its elements that are the focus is more wider. But of course, I need to mention something that we are doing in our organization. So we receive government agencies born digital records. That is the service that I mainly work with. So these experiences are mainly with organizations that have born digital information and records. We have a specific transfer package that is required. The principle is that electronic retention and digital format is a starting point. Paper-based material is only in exceptional cases. Right now we have a big mass digitization project in National Archives of Finland, where the printed documents that are in possession of state authorities and kept permanently, they will be digitized. So this is getting more, this is widening as we speak, but right now the capabilities are in born digital records, and the mass digitization project is ongoing. So the paper-based material is very, very exceptional. And what we are doing next is the implementation of the metadata service. And information service is not right now offered for digital content. So that is a big part of service development right now and near future. We are going phase by phase. And of course, like in every organization nowadays, the focus is to keep up with the evolution of diversity and descriptive metadata of digital records. So that's the everyday development that needs to be done. This is possible through different kind of projects and cooperation. eArchiving is one of those, and it has provided us many important insights and possibilities to participate and be part of a big community. So I have nothing but good to say about eArchiving. So I highly recommend to get to know about the project and what are the possibilities you could take on that. Okay, let's go forward with this. Before I describe the service process that is placed right now in our organization, I want to discuss about the high-level expectations and practical level expectations for the service process, and why these are important. So in my point of view, these expectations are always in the background of every participant, and it affects on their motivation and expectations and the whole process of using the service. So it's very important to be aware of these different levels of expectations and try to understand all the participants. So what these are, in the high level expectation, the most known expectation is to minimize costs. Especially in our country, the statutory preservation. So we have appraisal policy that on digital records are mainly preserved permanently, and of course that links to the preservation needs of the government's agencies. So, and I think that this is not only public bodies aim. I think that this is very wide need and a motivation of organizations and even individuals. So you should keep that in mind. Then of course there's the GDPR, and that is new element of the service process. What I mean by that is that the discussion relating to agreeing about transferring information to us, to repository, is now we discuss a lot about the GDPR, and is that information, can it be transferred now or in 10 years, or what are the perspectives on is there a operational requirements to the material, so it's not yet archived, and so on. So that is a big and long discussion with organizations, but that is a very high level expectation, but it's also practical level. That means that you need to be able to discuss these kind of requirements with different kind of experts and who are in different roles. For example, I discussed these things with government agencies coordinator who most likely has a records management background, and we talk about this in our level, and there's experts in legal roles, and they have a different kind of discussion of how these things should be applied. But that is something that we cannot ignore in any way. So that is part of the service process. Supporting digitization of operational processes. Well, maybe many of you can recognize the idea of paperless office and so on. So there is the high level expectation that archiving is archiving should also be part of the digitization of processes, and that is correct, and that can be used in a motivation element with the transferring organizations. and clients. So there's it's valuable to recognize that expectation too. Usability of the records to be kept in later study and to collect and preserve cultural heritage. These are, I would call these also motivation factors. These seem the key aims in National Archives and everyone who works with archiving. So this not might be every transferring organizations and clients first motivation. So the repository owners need to be keeping this important aspect in discussion, because as a National Archives represent, this is of course my biggest aim in everything that I do is to ensure the usability of the records and collect and preserve the cultural heritage. And the same goes to the last point, information available for current and future research, government, public bodies, organizations, and individuals. Again, this is a expectation that is maybe noticed in a later scenarios, that when the information is actually needed, this point seems very relevant. So this is of course the thing that we need to think about beforehand. But this is one of those elements that should be discussed about with the transferring organizations and clients, because there are different kind of things that need to be considered before the transfer, to keep sure that the information is available and usable. For example, metadata and different kind of formats the information is transferred and preserved. And all this links together. So in my experience, this forms the dynamics of participants that are part of the service process. And that's why all those expectations should be highly recognized and thought about. What I'm aiming in with this picture is to describe the continuing ongoing process and dynamics that are in the repository owners and the operational managers. So this is not this applies to every participant and role you have in the service process. Let's start with motivation. Just in a previous slide, I covered mainly the different kind of motivation. What I mean about this is that every participant for example, a transferring organization who wants to transfer information to repository, they have different kind of starting points in motivation and in capabilities. And these two combined defines what kind of support and guidance the service is needed to help them achieve what they want, and also what we as a repository want also. So we need to understand the motivation and capabilities. These capabilities, there's different kind of aspects you should consider. The capability to understand the information that they are going to transfer. So the understanding about what they are transferring and why. Also the financial capabilities. This can relate to what kind of tools they use in the project, or how many participants do they have. Is it a one person project, or is there 30 participants? So that should be discussed. And of course the capability of organizing the transfer. Many of the transferring organizations, many of them, they are a bit surprised when they are told that you should treat transfers like a project. So that is one capability that it's most of the time overlooked. So we try to recognize that in the beginning, and as much as we can is we try to help with that also. But of course the main responsibility of organizing the transfer in the transferring organization is in that organization. We cannot go there and make things happen, but we can help them with supporting and guidance. Of course, these all elements are affecting are in place in repositories, and also in my organization, National Archives. Our motivation, our capabilities affect on how we can support and guide those transferring organizations. So this is not only for the transferring organizations and clients. And I think that these are important elements to recognize in a repository by repository owners, because this is the way we can develop the whole service process, and in the end get more completed transfers, get more the information that we are preserving. And this all comes to the actual service process that we have built based on experience. Everything that I presented previously are elements that are on the background of this, so they are linked to another, so we can keep those in mind. What are the expectations, what motivation, capabilities, and so on. So what are we looking at? This is the service process model that we have in National Archives. We are a statutory actor to keep the material intact, authentic, and available, even if the formats or systems change over time. So that is our role and responsibility with the in this picture. I want to go through what I mean in what I mean in the different parts of this model, and point out things that are might be more National Archives specific, but also things that are most likely to be applicable to another organizations that offer these kind of services. So what do we have here? First of all, we have participants. The top level, there's transferring organization. We call them transferers. They can also be operation managers and so on. There are many ways to name these participants, but I hope that you understand what is the what I'm trying to identify with this. And lastly, on the bottom is the National Archives of Finland. So this is the block where is repository owner, the preservation service. So you can imagine what that would mean in your organization. Then I can see the comments like they come and go because I host this by myself, so I need to come back to those comments after this presentation because I cannot see them only a couple of seconds, but I will come back to those comments and the specific slides so I can answer every comment. Okay, so there's participants that are organizations, there's the transferring and the receiving participants. Then we can go to phases and actions. The main phases and actions are appraisal decision, what should be retained. So the starting point is that that transferring organization has a appraisal decision, and it should we use it to identify the permanently reserved information that should be transferred and retained. This is the process of National Archives. You might have something different. For example, if you are a private organization and you're providing preserving service, and your clients are companies that want to transfer information to be retained, like 30 years or something like that. So the starting point there is a bit different, but I see that the main thing is the what is the motivation, what is the reason, what is the why in this beginning. And in my context, it's the appraisal decision. Hopefully you you understood what I tried to say there. If you didn't, we can come back to this. And then after the appraisal decision and identifying what we are going to transfer and receive and retain, then starts two phases, mostly simultaneously. So we are talking about contract and transfer plan. And why these are simultaneously? Well, we have noticed that the contract includes many actions that can take a bit time, because we are agreeing upon responsibilities about retention and information services. Then there's the GDPR and so on. So there's many action points in this phase, and it takes time, and usually there are different kind of representations from the transferring organization, different kind of roles, like the legal department or something like that. So that goes that is on progress, and at the same time we usually start the discussion about transfer plan. And this means that we are having very active dialogue with the transferring organization about, okay, what is the information that we are transferring, and how and when can it be transferred. There are different kind of in every transfer there are different kind of topics that need to be discussed that are related to that specific information collection that they are transferring. This can be a very informal dialogue, and after that we have the understanding of the what we are transferring, what is the best way to do it, and so on. We document that into a transfer plan, where it's like and that is attached to the contract. So there is a documentation of the agreement, and also what was the process of transferring the information. So this goes side by side and needs to be coordinated from the both sides. In our case, in National Archives, we have a single point contact that coordinates these different discussions, and we highly recommend that the transferring organization has that kind of single point of contact also, because there are many different things that need different kind of experts, and it should be coordinated, that not everyone needs to be in every discussion and so on. So it goes back to the project management aspect. Okay, so this is the part where a lot of things are discussed, prepared, and also learned, and then we can go to the actual transfer, which is the simplest part of this because everything has been agreed upon before this, and everyone are on the same page. So then is the transfer, and actually using the preservation service here. So this is from our perspective, but I would see that no matter the organization, you should identify the participants and roles. What kind of roles are needed? For example, project manager or coordinator. Is there a need of someone from legal department? Then there's the archivist. Then there's the technical expert, and so on. And what kind of phases and actions do you have in this process? Because those phases and actions, they those are they require different kind of experts and different, so that links to the whole project management and getting the transfer done. In our organization, we have so-called first-timers in our service. What I mean about that is we have government agencies that have never done transfer born digital information transfer to National Archives. And for those first timers, like I like to say, this process is putting to the test because they have no background information about how this works. So then we when we apply this process, we get the best feedback on what should be done differently next time. So that is also very important to be open about the feedback and what are the different phases and actions that raise most of the questions? Is it that are there questions from something very specific, for example, legal questions, or is there something that is related to the actual process? Is the process confusing? Are the questions about what should we do next or something like that? Because when you listen those, you can consider those and uh, um, enhance the process even it doesn't mean you have to start from beginning. It means that there are active listening and little changes based on those feedbacks make a great difference to the end product, which is here the actual service. And we have also we have the first time transferring organizations, and then we have these agencies that have transferred information before and are doing it again. So then this process is a bit lighter. What I mean about that is that usually the appraisal decision is it's very clear to both of the parties. Usually the contract includes the option to transfer continuous transfers. So there's that is lighter process, and also they are familiar with how to actually prepare the information and how to transfer it to us. So it's faster, it's lighter, but that is also something that we are actively listening, that what are those organizations needs. Let's see, did I cover everything from this? Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, this is our experience-based model with in our current situation, and this is continuously evolving, and we are the I'll put this okay. So this is the model right now, but we are aiming that it will evolve with the service. So it's not our it's not the priority to hold on exactly this model. It needs to go like this. No, it's the opposite. The model, whatever model you have, you should be listening and be ready to change it when it's needed, and it's part of its character. It evolves. So because the process again it is for to support and guide those transferring organizations and clients. Then we go to the last slide, last topic. So how this service process affects the development of digital archiving. In my experience, it is very important that the service process is cohesive, which means it is understandable for all parties. We cannot expect something for another participants if we haven't actually told them what we are expecting, what we need, what is happening, what is the next step, how do they know that the current step is done and can go forward and so on. So the cohesiveness and also the transparency is very important in service process. Again, I highly encourage you to notify the expectation and requirements that are behind all this, because those affect the service process and of course the whole organization, because for example requirements, you need to follow the GDPR. That's the way it goes, so you should be very aware of that. But there's another there's different kind of expectations and requirements, and you should consider them and think about them from your perspective and how to apply those. Roles and responsibilities. Again, we come to this transparency and understanding another. So the open dialogue of what are the roles and responsibilities when in this service process. This applies to both participants and also in the communication with the another participant. So for example, it's important that in every starting discussion with the transferring organization about transfer, I need to be clear on that. We highly recommend you have a single point of contact or coordinator or something like that. That is one example of this that needs to be said and needs to be understood, that there are different kind of roles and then there are responsibilities. There are role specific responsibilities, and then they are organization specific responsibilities. But these should be openly discussed. Recognizing support needed and agree how those are met. And this comes to the conclusion that digital archives needs users, transferring organizations and end users. So again, coming back to the dynamics, where was motivation, capabilities, and the service, we need to recognize, identify, and understand the support needed. That what are those questions. What are those phases and actions that require support? Are they more technical? Are they something else? And what are the possibilities to meet those needs? And these usually can evolve to best practices and shorten the times that is taken to complete these kind of transferring projects. Again, it's an ongoing process. And from my point of view as a National Archive representative, I think that we need different kind of users. We need that we have transferring organizations so we can have the permanently preserved information, and we need those who are accessing those information, those end users, because that is why we are here. and to get to that point, we need to be able to have a dialogue, have a transparent process, and be open to accommodate it when it's needed. And that all leads to wider use of and wider interest of digital archiving and different kind of aspects of it. Is it tools? Is it specifications? Is it the processes, and so on? No black box thinking, communication to ensure quality of service process. Again, transparency. Transferring organizations need and want to be aware of what they should do and what is going to happen next. So no mystical black boxes, what is going on in there. The whole process should be transparent as possible, and communicate in every phase and action it has, because that is also the tool to ensure the quality of the service process. Successful service process enhances the autonomy of transferring organizations. What I mean about this is that when you're transferring, again, you have a continuous transferring plan with the transfer and the repository. When these processes are in place and they are clear to one another, it enhances every time the autonomy of the transferring organization. There are different kind of parts that doesn't need so much support than maybe last time, and we can go more and more to the autonomy. Of course, there are things that can do technically automatic and so on, but I'm also interested in the way of making possible that those organizations, they are more independent of these kind of processes, that they have the right tools to use our services, and they understand how everything works. So that is the what I mean in the from the autonomy of transferring organizations. Then last slide, continuing with these effects. I see that service process is part of utilizing building blocks, modeling the process best practices. So again, modeling the process doesn't mean that you need to be fixed on certain model. No, it's the modeling the process is ongoing. It's met every day based on the discussions and feedback and so on. So keep in mind the model is evolving with every transferring case, but I think also that you should identify certain elements and factors in this process. So that's why I use the term model, because there are some elements you can point out no matter what organization or best practices. This comes to the idea that these experiences should be discussed. So maybe we can see and notice something in our practices that are maybe there are different kind of variations that we just don't know yet. So with cooperation, it is possible to learn more how other organizations do these things and maybe apply them to our processes. In National Archives of Finland, we are participating in the eArchiving project. We are actively analyzing the implementation of the outcomes of the project, and my point of view, I'm of course interested in the tools and practices that enhance the service experience and the usability of our services. And to end this presentation, I want to remind you of two things. I think that we can reach wider with service process. Digital archiving is not only for National Archives, and dynamics and communication are part of the successful environment of getting digital information to archive, and service is mainly about dynamics and communication, cooperation with tools, of course. So that was my presentation. I want to thank you all, and I'll check the questions and come back to the slides that that are applicable. Let's see how I can.
Thanks a lot, Katya. So we have a question from Aldo. It's quite a long one, so if you skip, and it came quite recently, so if you skip to the bottom of the chat.
Yes.
Aldo.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a national standard defining best practice for service process in Finland, or do you refer to different publications? Like I said in the beginning, that this is experience-based model. We don't use a specific standard here or even refer to any publications. This is, of course, we are open for all of that, but this is we are building the whole digital preservation and archiving service phase by phase, and right now we are here, we are using our experience, but of course if there's standards and uh, best practices, we are of course considering those, but right now specific for this this context, no, we do not have. The ITIL standard addressing design of the ITIL services. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I have some kind of certification also from that, but we are not thinking about this as an IT service. So we are more, I'm not sure how to say this in English, but well, but those IT standards are used more specific in IT services, and we are doing mainly serving and guiding transfer organizations. So that is not, we don't utilize the ITIL. Are you aware of any standards specially designed for information governance, management, or service process? That's a very good question, and no. Like I said in the beginning, that I'm a bit nervous to make this presentation because I haven't seen or participate any events that cover exact this topic. I'm very interested in this topic, and I have done some research by myself about this topic, and I cannot point out any standard that is especially to this archive preservation service process. There's some guidelines for governance and so on, but again, not this kind of process, considering the participants and what is the aim and the outcome of this process. So no, but I'm very interested in those. So if you have any recommendation, you can contact me. I go beginning okay, then there's how exactly are you planning to use eArchiving in your organization? So as a national archives and the setup for this presentation is that we are providing the digital archiving. We are providing digital archiving to government agencies. So that is that we provide the service and planning to use. Well, as a national archives, of course, we need to develop our own processes that we can digitally archive our own information that it is born in our our operation. I'm not sure did you mean that, but yes, we are preserving our own information. That's how I apply that. But thank you for the question. What kind of digital records did NAF receive so far? Good question. We have received born digital records that we have a big list of formats we support. I don't know, are you interested in those, but in a very I can mention a couple of information types. So we have received records that are born digital documents and or images. We have PDF-A, OpenOffice, TIFF, and so on. There are many more. Then databases and structured information that are migrated to non-system specific format. We have some ADDML for technical metadata, and we are part of the CERT development. It's in the work package. Is it A2 or A3? A2, I think. We are part of that. So then and we are right now we have we are receiving the mass digitized documents. We are in a phase that right now we are testing that system that we have mass digitized, and we we do the digitization and we preserve those information, and the next step is to provide that service to another organizations that they can order the digitization from us or do them by themselves. From we have guidelines for that, and then we take those digitized documents and preserve them. So it varies what kind of records we have received, and for now we are able to receive government agencies permanently preserved records. So, for example, municipalities are are not yet to they are not able to use this yet. Yes. Use. How you navigated the line between flexibility and more formal process? I hear you. I expect each depository may have specific requirements, so do you adapt your workflow or enforce your design process? Very good question and point. That is the reality of of this role, is to navigate between those two worlds of being flexible but also formal and firm. So there are some things that cannot be modified. For example, legally we are able to receive only the government agencies' permanently preserved records to our service. not municipalities. I cannot be flexible on that because that's beyond my my role. But many phases are how would I say, they can be modified to so that we can met the um, we can met the support needed. So we are very flexible. But yeah, like I said, there are certain elements and part of the model that are there no matter what kind of participants are. Those are always there. But of course, yeah, there's a lot of adaptation and support with it. So I think that a certain formality is good, but you also need to have an understanding of that transparent organizations can be in very different places with their, for example, financial situations and those kind of capabilities, but they can have the best motivation, and it of course we want to help them and we want to get those records. So yeah. Yes, I can. Yeah, I can do the written answers. Okay. Yeah, there was a very good questions. I'm very pleased about that. And was there anything that you could recognize that are these things that you share? Are there are these processes something that you do in your position, or I'm very interested because I think that I often feel that I'm the only one who does this for the living, besides my one colleague that who is here listening my presentation. So thank you, Vesa-Matti. Yeah. So how do you recognize these things in your organization or your role?
I don't see any more questions coming in. Arvon from Fulgencia. Thank you, Fulgencia. Okay, but I would like to, maybe if people want to ponder any last comments or responses to Katya's last question, I would just like to say a very big thank you to Katya for that very illuminating presentation, and thank you to all the participants who asked, I think, what were very insightful questions. And as well, thank you to Jamie for your overview of the building block and the training program. If I don't see any more questions coming in at this point, then we can maybe wrap up, because Katya's email address is available at the end of the slide deck. So we'll make this available after the webinar, along with the recording. And you, I'm not the presenter, so maybe I can quickly share the contact details. So voila. So you can see here Katya's email. So feel free to reach out to Katya if you want to follow up. And as well, you have our email address there, Sef-Building Blocks at ec.europa.eu, and you can find a link there to Sef Digital. We have our next webinar on the 21st of June, so we do hope that you'll be able to join us there, and you'll be able to find as well on the Sef website the recordings of our previous webinars. I think that's everything. So thank you very much to our presenters, and thanks very much to all those of you who've joined. And I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.